Chapter 81. The next day, at dawn, the underground cave in the ancient battlefield was pitch black. Having calculated the time, Songwen and Xianyi were ready to go. As usual, Xianyi led the way. The tunnel they were traversing had many branches, and only Xianyi knew which path to take. After walking for about 2 hours, Songwen suddenly stopped and asked Xianyi, "Taoist Xianyi, is the snake pit not far ahead?" Xianyi asked in confusion, "Brother Guitao, why do you ask? Have you been here before and know the way to the snake pit? It is indeed not far ahead, only a few hundred meters." Songwen shook his head and said, "I have never been to the ancient battlefield, but about 300 meters ahead there is a group of snakes dragging 6 zombies, crawling forward." Previously, Songwen had already demonstrated his superior spiritual power. Xianyi did not doubt the truth of Songwen's words about being able to perceive scenes 300 meters away. He continued to ask, "What do the snakes look like?" "They are completely black and vary in size. The smallest are as thick as a thumb, and the largest are as thick as an arm," Songwen replied. Xianyi nodded. "That should be correct. Those are the black vipers from the snake pit. They are hunting." Hunting? Songwen was somewhat surprised. It was the first time Songwen had heard of such peculiar creatures that fed on zombies. Xianyi nodded and said, "Food is scarce in the cave. It is not unusual for beasts and zombies to hunt each other." "So, what should we do now?" Songwen asked. "We should not disturb the black vipers hunting ahead. Let them carry their prey back to the snake pit." Xianyi paused and then continued, "For the next step in harvesting the snake scale fruit, we will need to rely on Brother Guitao." Songwen nodded and said, "No problem, this is what we agreed upon earlier. Shouldn't you explain the plan for harvesting the snake scale fruit now?" Xianyi had mentioned before that his plan required the help of a body cultivator, which was why he invited Songwen and Niu Ding to join him, but he had not disclosed the detailed plan. Xianyi said, "The black vipers have been living in the underground of the ancient battlefield for a long time and feed on zombies, making them naturally fond of darkness and in energy. They fear fire and the yang energy of heaven and earth. To successfully acquire the snake scale fruit I have prepared for a long time, I spent a large amount of money to commission a set of the Raging Inferno array. This array consists of 8 array flags. As long as the 8 flags are placed in the correct positions and I activate the array disk, the area within the array will turn into a sea of fire. The temperature within this array is extremely high and contains a trace of the yang energy of heaven and earth. If this array is set up on the ground of the snake pit, the black vipers, due to their nature, will be forced deep into the snake hole. Then it will be much easier for us to retrieve the snake scale fruit." Upon hearing this, Songwen frowned deeply. Xianyi's plan sounded feasible, but its implementation would definitely not be as smooth as he described. For example, how to successfully place the 8 array flags was a significant problem. The black vipers would not just stand by and watch a human cultivator move around their territory without reacting. However, Songwen did not immediately voice any doubts but instead nodded in agreement. "Let's first take a look at the situation in the snake pit and then decide how to proceed." Xianyi nodded. "That sounds good." The two of them waited while the black vipers ahead slowly dragged the zombies. It took them a full 2/4 of an hour to cover a distance of several miles. Xianyi and Songwen hid in the shadows at a bend in the cave, about 300 meters from the snake pit. To avoid alerting the black vipers, Xianyi had already put away the luminous stone he used for light, leaving the surroundings in darkness through his beetle goo. Songwen observed the general situation of the snake pit. The cave housing the snake pit was several tens of meters high, with a sloping rock ledge extending from the ground all the way to the ceiling. The rock slope was dotted with numerous small holes, some as large as 2 inches in diameter, others as small as a thumb. Hundreds of black vipers slithered and crawled over the rock slope, with many more lying half hidden in the snake holes, their tails sticking out. These black vipers varied greatly in size, some as thick as a bowl, others as slender as chopsticks. Midway up the slope, a solitary small tree, about 2 meters high, grew there, perhaps due to never having been exposed to sunlight. The tree was entirely grayish-white, including its leaves. At the top of the small tree hung 3 fist-sized, fiery red fruits, brimming with spiritual energy and emitting a pleasant fragrance. Many small snakes slithered around the base of the tree, their eyes fixed greedily on the 3 snake scale fruits, but none dared to climb the tree and bite into the fruits. Looking around at the pitch-black surroundings, Songwen asked, "Taoist Xianyi, what do we do next?" Xianyi replied, "When we make our move, I will send a fierce ghost to draw the attention of the snakes and simultaneously cast a fireball spell. Brother Guitao, Your task is to use the firelight to quickly throw the 8 array flags into their corresponding positions. As he spoke, Xianyi produced an array flag. The array flag was about 2 feet long, with a fiery red banner and a black pole. The tip of the pole was very sharp, evidently designed to be easily driven into the rock. Mysterious cloud patterns were drawn on both the banner and the pole, with flames seeming to flow among the patterns, making it look extraordinary. Xianyi said, "This array flag weighs about 100 pounds. You will need to use your brute strength to accurately throw it to the array positions. Can you do that?" With his 7th level Qi refining strength, Xianyi's spiritual power could only cover a range of just over 100 meters. Beyond this range, his control over magical tools would be lost, leaving the tools to move only by inertia, making precise control impossible. Naturally, he couldn't accurately place the array flags into the array positions. Therefore, Xianyi had to seek another method. He thought of finding a body cultivator to assist in retrieving the snake scale fruit's body. Cultivators possess great physical strength, enabling them to throw the array flags accurately into position from a distance. Songwen took the array flag, hefted it, and said, "That should be no problem, but relying on brute strength to throw each flag one by one is too cumbersome and time-consuming. It's easy to be detected by the black vipers, causing the array setup to fail." Xianyi raised an eyebrow and said, "Oh, do you have a better method?" Songwen replied, "My spiritual power can barely cover the area of the snake pit. If I can initially refine the array flags, I can use my spiritual power to control all 8 flags simultaneously and place them into their positions." After more than 2 months of nurturing, Songwen had slowly discovered new uses for his beetle goo. Besides extending his spiritual power, the beetle goo could also simply control magical tools within this extended range. Although he couldn't use the magical tools to attack enemies within this range, he could still manage to control 8 array flags and place them into the array positions. End of the chapter. Chapter 82. Xianyi's face showed a hint of astonishment as he glanced at Songwen with admiration and said softly, "Brother Guitao's innate talent is indeed extraordinary, possessing such powerful spiritual strength." Ignoring Xianyi's envious words, Songwen continued, "But since this task requires me to refine the array flags, I wonder if it will affect your operation of the array." Xianyi shook his head and produced an array plate about the size of a wash basin, saying, "That's not a problem. You only need to preliminarily refine the array flags. Once the flags are inserted into their positions, the true control of the array is handled by this array plate. As long as you don't move the flags with your spiritual power or interfere with my operation, it won't affect the array's function." Songwen nodded. "That sounds good." Xianyi said, "Brother Guitao, please follow me. I will teach you the diagram of the Raging Inferno array so you can arrange it." Songwen agreed. "All right, let's proceed as you say." The next day, the two, having completed their preparations, began their operation. The headless ghost suddenly appeared at the edge of the snake pit, its head thrown back as it let out a piercing scream. The scream was sharp and ear-piercing. Like some kind of demonic sound, the sudden disturbance caused the black vipers, accustomed to the dark and quiet environment, to become agitated. Smaller black vipers began to dart around, while the more intelligent ones slithered into the snake holes. Nearby, larger black vipers opened their mouths wide, revealing their long, sharp fangs. Their crimson tongues flicked in the air. Restless and agitated, the large vipers coiled their tails and then shot towards the headless ghost like arrows. Determined to annihilate this intruding spirit, more large snakes crawled out of the snake holes. At this moment, 8 array flags fell from the sky. The black vipers were all drawn to the headless ghost's distraction, and before they could react, the flags had already been inserted into various corners of the snake pit. Array activate. Xianyi's face turned serious as he repeatedly formed hand seals. The array plate floated in front of him, its surface glowing with dazzling light. 8 spirit stones, each the size of an infant's fist, emitted dense spiritual energy, continuously feeding into the array plate, causing its brilliance to intensify. Songwen, standing beside him, looked on with surprise. 8 medium-grade spirit stones. Xianyi had indeed invested heavily for this task. Not only did he employ someone to craft the expensive array, but he also used 8 medium-grade spirit stones to power it, equivalent to 800 low-grade spirit stones. Songwen realized that everyone who came with him to the ancient battlefield's underground cave seemed to be of notable background, with each person possessing an excessive amount of spirit stones. However, like him, these individuals also had reasons to venture into dangerous depths. It seemed that, like him, they had exhausted their resources and were taking desperate measures. Above the snake pit, a layer of fire-red transparent shield suddenly enveloped the area. Countless flames erupted from the ground, and the temperature within the array began to rise rapidly. The black vipers fled in all directions, with some of the weaker ones burned to cinders. The raging inferno array trapped the black vipers that were originally on the ground within the array, while those underground sensed the terrifyingly high temperature of the array and, due to their innate fear of fire and light, fled deeper into the cave. Only a few large snakes, thick as bowls, could barely withstand the intense heat. Though their scales were scorched and falling off, these large snakes battered against the edge of the array with all their might. Each impact caused the shield to sway and flicker as if it might shatter at any moment. Each collision worsened the injuries of the black vipers, with the areas directly striking the shield becoming charred black. In addition to the black vipers, the fire of the array also scorched the snake scale tree and the headless ghost. The headless ghost, originally solid, now appeared somewhat ethereal. It had been sprayed with venom by the black vipers, dispersing much of its dark aura. However, since the array was activated in time, it avoided a disaster. As soon as the array was activated, the headless ghost advanced, rather than retreating, charging directly towards the snake scale fruit tree at the center of the snake pit. The temperature in the array was so high that it could potentially damage the medicinal properties of the snake scale fruit if left for too long. When the headless ghost reached the fruit tree, the leaves of the tree had already turned yellow and those closer to the ground were beginning to burn. However, the 3 snake scale fruits at the top of the tree were still relatively unaffected. The headless ghost struck the fruit tree in half with a palm, then used its ghostly aura to carry the severed tree into the air. Seeing the precious snake scale fruit tree destroyed, the surviving black vipers went into a frenzy. They ignored their injuries and leaped from the ground towards the flying headless ghost. As the headless ghost reached the top of the array, a gap suddenly opened in the shield, allowing the ghost to escape through it. The gap then quickly closed, blocking the black vipers that followed. Xianyi, who controlled the shield to provide an escape route for the headless ghost, appeared unaffected, but his face suddenly turned pale, beads of sweat dripping down his forehead, showing signs of excessive spiritual exhaustion. Songwon, on the other hand, was busy as well. A black viper as large as a bowl and with strength comparable to a 7th-level Qi cultivator had escaped the array and was charging towards the two of them. Songwon glanced at Xianyi, who was fully focused on controlling the array plate, and suppressed the urge to flee. For now, he still needed Xianyi to lead the way. Songwon tapped his waist pouch, releasing a corpse puppet. The corpse puppet strode forward, heading straight for the large snake. Seeing the corpse puppet attack with claws and fangs, the black viper had to slow down, coiling its tail and then snapping it forward. The corpse puppet was immediately sent flying, but its tough hide meant it wasn't badly hurt. Just as the corpse puppet was being thrown, a long iron spike shot towards the black viper's left eye. The black viper's head jerked to avoid the vulnerable eye, then its head slammed into the iron spike. Clang. The soul-breaking awl and the snake head clashed, producing a metallic sound. The soul-breaking awl was deflected. A portion of the scales on the black viper's head shattered, revealing the bloodied flesh underneath. At this moment, the corpse puppet wrapped itself around the large snake again, grabbing its tail and tensing its muscles, trying to throw the snake. The large snake, unwilling to be thrown, coiled its body around the corpse puppet's waist. It opened its gaping maw and spat out a stream of venom. The venom splashed onto the corpse puppet's head, hissing as it corroded. The already hideous face of the puppet became even more distorted and terrifying. The corpse puppet went berserk, sinking its teeth into the snake's most vulnerable belly. Blood splattered everywhere. The sharp fangs pierced the snake's skin, causing the large snake to thrash wildly in pain. Its body began to flail. After a difficult struggle, the snake finally managed to throw off the corpse puppet, but a large piece of flesh was bitten off from its belly. The corpse puppet swallowed the snake meat and was about to attack again when it suddenly halted and turned to flee. It turned out that the headless ghost had already retrieved the snake scale fruit. End of the chapter. Chapter 83. Xianyi said, Daoist Gua, I am going to deactivate the array. As he spoke, Xianyi made several hand seals toward the array plate, and the crimson protective shield above the snake pit suddenly dissipated. Songwon casually waved, and the 8 array flags rose from the ground and flew towards him. Songwon slapped a haste talisman onto himself and turned to flee. With his spiritual energy exhausted and his strength weakened, Xianyi tapped one of his ghost storage pouches at his waist. 5 small ghosts with snow-white skin and colorful clothing leaped Out, the five ghosts lifted Xianyi and followed closely behind Songwon. Swirling with gusts of cold wind, the five ghosts moved at incredible speed and quickly overtook Songwon, seeing more and more black vipers closing in behind him. Songwon was engulfed in a haze of blood mist, his speed increasing dramatically, and he quickly passed Xianyi. An hour later, having shaken off the black vipers, Songwon and Xianyi found a small cave to rest. Daoist Gua, there are a total of 3 snake-scale fruits here. How would you like to divide them? At some point, Xianyi had stopped calling Songwon Brother Gua Tao and instead referred to him as Daoist Gua. Snake-scale fruits are precious spiritual herbs that can help Qi cultivators break through to higher realms. They are rare and typically not sold openly. When available, they are usually traded for other rare spiritual materials. For Songwon, the snake-scale fruit wasn't urgently needed. His breakthroughs had been smooth so far, with no long-term difficulties in overcoming bottlenecks. However, since the fruits were now in hand, Songwon could not afford to give them up. Just give me one. The snake-scale fruit is only effective when taken for the first time. Moreover, Xianyi had contributed more to this expedition and deserved to receive more of the fruits. Xianyi nodded and placed one of the snake-scale fruits into a prepared jade box, handing it to Songwon. Thanks to Daoist Gua for your help on this trip. Xianyi is deeply grateful. Songwon replied, we are merely cooperating for mutual benefit. No need for thanks, but do not forget, you promised to accompany me to retrieve the hollow cicada wood. Of course, let me rest a bit and we will set out tomorrow. The next day, Songwon and Xianyi returned to the cave where they had parted ways with the 2 people in purple. They continued along the cave passages after traveling several dozen miles. Songwon was astonished to find that numerous plants had appeared in the cave. Most of these plants grew in damp corners, with some emitting a faint glow which was quite magical. If it weren't for the lack of spiritual energy in these plants, Songwon might have suspected they were some special spiritual herbs. Songwon marveled again at the wonders of the cultivation world. Perhaps this is one of the meanings of cultivating immortality, always encountering extraordinary things beyond ordinary imagination. As Songwon was moving forward, he suddenly stopped and said, in a nearby side passage, there is a small cave hiding 2 people. Having already grown accustomed to Songwon's extraordinary spiritual perception, Xianyi was no longer surprised. He asked, what kind of people? Songwon's expression was somewhat peculiar as he replied, a man and a woman, both with low cultivation. One is at the 4th level of Qi cultivation and the other at the 3rd level. The man is also injured. A Qi cultivator at the 4th level and another at the 3rd level dare to venture into the ancient battlefield's underground caverns. This was indeed somewhat unexpected for Songwon. Xianyi, however, looked unsurprised and said, they are likely brought here as scouts. Even Qi cultivators at the late stage have a limited spiritual perception range of about 100 meters in these dark, complex underground caves. This range is often insufficient, thus, some cultivators resort to using living people as scouts. By marking the living individuals and controlling their lives and deaths, these unfortunate people have no chance of resisting. Xianyi continued, let's go take a look. Encountering living people in the caverns, especially those with low cultivation, made Xianyi consider gathering information from them. Songwon and Xianyi soon arrived at the small cave where the man and woman were hiding. Seeing the sudden appearance of Songwon and Xianyi, the man looked panicked and shielded the woman behind him. The man was in his 40s, dressed like a wandering cultivator. He had large sections of flesh torn from his waist, indicating that his injury had been sustained for some time. His wounds had been bandaged and the bleeding had stopped. The woman was about 10 years younger and had an ordinary appearance. What are you doing here? How did you end up in this underground cave? Without acknowledging the panic of the pair, Xianyi asked coldly, as if afraid of displeasing Xianyi and Songwon by answering too slowly. The middle-aged man hurriedly responded, we are a father and daughter from Tianyuan Market, a small gathering place of wandering cultivators. We were captured by 3 late-stage Qi cultivators. They used my daughter's life as leverage, forcing me to explore the caverns for them. Tianyuan Market was a small market established by wandering cultivators not far from the ancient battlefield. How did you escape? Xianyi continued, while scouting in the cave, I suddenly saw a pile of bones dozens of meters high. At the top of the bone pile were 2 spiritual trees with a jade-like appearance, one of which was over 3 feet tall. I was just about to relay the information to the 3 behind me when 2 vengeful spirits burst out from the bone pile. The spirits were extremely powerful, and the cold wind they stirred easily threw me against the cave wall, injuring me severely. After that, I lost consciousness. About half a quarter of an hour later, I slowly regained consciousness, but the vengeful spirits were gone. Concerned for my daughter's safety, I hurried back. However, my daughter and the 3 cultivators, who should have been only about 200 meters away, had vanished. All that was left were signs of a struggle. I couldn't find my daughter's body, so I held onto a slim hope and continued searching. Eventually, I found her in the small cave. It turns out she had managed to escape while the 3 were fighting the vengeful spirits and survived by luck. What the middle-aged man did not notice was that when he mentioned the bone pile and the jade-like spiritual trees, Songwon and Xianyi exchanged glances. The jade-like spiritual trees were the exact purpose of Songwen's journey, the hollow cicada wood. From the man's account, Songwen also inferred that the 3 cultivators who encountered the vengeful spirits had likely been defeated. If they had won, they would have taken the hollow cicada wood with them. Songwen observed the father and daughter closely but found nothing particularly remarkable about them. Their luck seemed extraordinarily excessive. They had survived against powerful vengeful spirits for no apparent reason at that moment. One of the scouting beetles suddenly transmitted another message. Songwen asked, "Someone else is coming?" He had not encountered anyone since entering the underground cave, so he was surprised to encounter another group so soon. Who are they? A group of 3, 2 of them are dressed in purple and they are followed by a male cultivator at the 8th level of Qi cultivation. The condition of this male cultivator seems quite unusual. End of the chapter. Chapter 84. Blood was still dripping from the 7 orifices of the male cultivator and his limbs twitched intermittently as if he was enduring immense pain during his escape. Lao Chun had a speed-boosting talisman attached to him and was wrapped in a red silk ribbon, the other end of which was held by Ze. Ze was carrying Lao Chun as they ran. However, due to the poor condition of the male cultivator behind them, his speed was slightly slower than the 2 in front and he could not catch up. As soon as Songwen finished speaking, he continued, "They are fleeing. They are being pursued by 2 vengeful spirits. Not good, they're turning towards us. Run." After finishing his words, Songwen turned and ran deeper into the cave, with Xianyi following closely behind. The vengeful spirits pursuing the 3 were evidently very powerful, otherwise the 3 wouldn't have been fleeing in such a disarray. As soon as Songwen and Xianyi left, the Lu father and daughter became terrified. They didn't even stop to verify if what Songwen said was true and followed them out of the cave. The cave they were hiding in was only a few meters deep. If the vengeful spirits noticed them, they could easily be exterminated, leaving them no place to hide. The commotion caused by the fleeing group immediately caught the attention of the 3 escaping cultivators behind. "Fellow cultivators ahead, could you please stop and help us fend off the vengeful spirits?" Running away is not a solution, the Qi cultivator at the 8th level suddenly called out. Xianyi and Songwen remained unmoved. Only a fool would help them fend off the enemies. It's likely that as soon as they engaged with the vengeful spirits, the others would escape on their own, leaving them to fight the spirits alone. Unfortunately for the Lu father and daughter, their abilities were too weak, especially Lu Mu at only the 3rd level of Qi cultivation. Even with a speed boosting talisman, she severely slowed down her father's escape in just a few breaths. The 2 were caught up by the 3 cultivators from behind. Ze and Lao Chun overtook the Lu father and daughter directly. The Qi cultivator at the 8th level looked at the Lu father and daughter with disdain. "Damn it, what bad luck. We finally encountered 2 living people, thinking we could use them as cannon fodder to block the vengeful spirits, but who would have thought it would be you 2? With your strength, you can't even block the spirits for a moment." This male cultivator was one of the 3 who had previously captured the Lu family. After moving forward for several dozen meters, the male cultivator noticed that Xianyi and Songwen, who were at the very front, had suddenly stopped. "Stop running. Ahead is a dead end." Songwen shouted loudly to everyone in the cave. Ahead, 100 meters or so away, the passageway came to a halt, blocked by thick rock. Reluctantly, Songwen searched around with the beetle's ability, confirming that there were indeed no exits. Songwen felt frustrated. They had followed the map to this point and only entered this side path after encountering the Lu family. Unexpectedly, they were trapped here. "If you don't want to die, everyone prepare to fight." Ze and Lao Chun arrived in front of Songwen and nodded slightly, acknowledging each other. Meanwhile, the Qi cultivator at the 8th level let out an eerie laugh. "Haha, heaven is not unkind to me, Yen Gu, at this critical moment. I've encountered 4 fellow cultivators. It seems my life isn't destined to end today." It turned out that Ze and Lao Chun had also encountered Yen Gu while escaping. After parting ways with Songwen and the others, Ze and Lao Chun, without the guidance of the familiar Xianyi and relying only on a simple map, quickly got lost in the complex underground cave system. They spent a lot of time finding the right direction again and had barely made any progress before running into Yen Gu, who had thought he was doomed. suddenly saw Ze and Lao Chun and decided to lead them into disaster, dragging Ze and Lao Chun into the mess. Everyone, don't worry too much. The two vengeful spirits have had a lot of their energy drained by me and two other fellow cultivators. Their strength is less than 50% of their peak. If we join forces, we still have a chance to kill them. No one paid attention to Yengu. Everyone was busy preparing their means of defense. The soul-breaking all floated in front of Songwon, its murderous aura swirling, as the name suggested. The soul-breaking all was an artifact specifically for dealing with ghosts, perfect for confronting these two vengeful spirits. Xianyi summoned both the sheep-headed ghost and the general ghost, which floated beside him, one on each side. Zi and Lao Chun each released a corpse puppet, revealing that they, like Songwon, were also corpse cultivators. Yengu's artifact was the most unusual. He wore a necklace of 18 human skulls around his neck and held a wooden fish made of human skulls in his hand. Yengu turned out to be an extremely rare evil Buddha path cultivator. The Lu father and daughter, who had arrived last, hid in a corner of the rocky wall. They had no courage to participate in the battle and were ignored by everyone at this moment. The two vengeful spirits drew closer, and everyone could see their appearances clearly. The two vengeful spirits were of different sizes. The larger one was over 10 feet tall, a slender green-faced female ghost with the cultivation of the 7th level of Qi. The smaller one was less than a meter tall. With short limbs and resembling a dwarf, it was a white-faced male ghost with the cultivation of the 8th level of Qi. The green-faced female ghost moved rapidly on all fours, her limbs brushing against the ground as she advanced. Quickly, the dwarf ghost rode on the back of the green-faced female ghost, maintaining a bizarre smile on his snow-white face and occasionally making murmuring sounds. Attack. Songwon was the first to launch an attack, sending the soul-breaking all like an arrow toward the dwarf ghost's head. The dwarf ghost's eerie smile remained unchanged. It used its short arms to deflect the soul-breaking all, which was knocked away even before it could come within half a meter of it. Xianye's two ghosts, as well as Lao Chun and Ziyi's two corpse puppets, also launched their attacks. The general ghost swung a long knife at the green-faced female ghost lying on the ground, while the sheep-headed ghost clawed at the dwarf ghost. The two corpse puppets attacked the dwarf ghost from both sides. Suddenly, the dwarf ghost howled towards the sky, and a fierce wind blew through the cave, sending sand and stones flying. The attacks of the two ghosts and the two corpse puppets were all blocked by the howling wind, and all four were blown away by the powerful wind. This violent wind seemed to consume a lot of energy, and the dwarf ghost did not continue to release it. It quickly stopped its attack. At this moment, Yengu's attack began. He threw the wooden fish into the air, took the human skull necklace from his neck, and began to spin it continuously. The two items were actually a set of artifacts. At the same time, he rapidly chanted complex scriptures. The wooden fish floated in the air, emitting bursts of white light that enveloped the two vengeful spirits below. The white light seemed to have a restraining effect on the vengeful spirits. The energy on the two vengeful spirits rapidly dissipated, and in just a few breaths, their bodies seemed to have partially dissolved. However, Yengu's condition was very poor. The white light from the wooden fish was unstable, fluctuating in intensity. It was clear that Yengu's sea of consciousness had been severely injured. The dwarf ghost looked up with a resentful gaze at the wooden fish in the air. Seemingly having suffered greatly from it before, the dwarf ghost suddenly leaped from the back of the green-faced female ghost, charging towards the wooden fish through the white light, seemingly intent on destroying it despite the pain. End of the chapter. Chapter 85. As the dwarf ghost leaped, a beam of black light pierced down toward the green-faced female ghost below. The green-faced female ghost, clearly weaker, was suffering greatly from the beam. She was preparing to use the wind to escape when the soul-breaking all, having been deflected earlier, came back and struck her from behind. The powerful murderous aura from the soul-breaking all erupted, stabbing into the green-faced female ghost's body. Ugh. The green-faced female ghost emitted a shrill and unclear scream. At that moment, a talisman in Xianye's hand turned into powder. A giant sword, formed from spiritual energy, appeared out of nowhere above the female ghost and swung down towards her head. This was a high-grade talisman, the evil exorcism talisman. In this critical moment, the green-faced female ghost gathered all her ghostly energy to form a shield above her head. Boom. The giant sword struck the shield. The shield, hastily formed, was weaker than expected and shattered after a brief moment of resistance. The giant sword then cleaved into the green-faced female ghost's head, its immense spiritual energy penetrating through her. The ghostly energy on the green-faced female ghost was dispersed by the spiritual power of the giant sword, and her body began to become transparent and ethereal as if it might dissipate at any moment. In midair, the dwarf ghost, who had been preparing to grab the wooden fish, saw the green-faced female ghost injured and stopped its actions, its eyes blazing with anger. The dwarf ghost's body suddenly erupted with 5 phantoms that charged toward Songwen and the others. The dwarf ghost itself flew toward the green-faced female ghost, its ghostly energy wildly surging into her body. The dwarf ghost was trying to save the female ghost. The 5 phantoms quickly turned into 5 transparent blades as they left the dwarf ghost's body and reached the 5 people in an instant. Songwen didn't sense any spiritual, ghostly, or energy fluctuations from the blades, but they gave him an extremely dangerous feeling. What kind of attack is this? Songwen, who was horrified and unable to understand the situation, had no choice but to use his strongest defensive measures. He activated the 10,000 poison body, while simultaneously channeling the purple scale armor with all his might. A purple gold shield enveloped Songwen's entire body. Outside the purple gold shield was a large green vessel, however. The anticipated violent impact never came. The vessel and the purple gold shield did not block the transparent blades at all and were penetrated. Yet they remained undamaged. This was a mental attack. This ghost was using the extremely rare mental attack technique in the cultivation world. How did such a mere ghost learn this? Just as Songwen was struck by this thought, the transparent blade pierced his forehead. Instantly, excruciating pain surged through Songwen's sea of consciousness as the blade appeared inside his mind, its intense killing intent threatening to upheave his entire consciousness. The sea of consciousness is the most vulnerable and crucial part of a cultivator, and Songwen naturally couldn't afford any mistakes. All he could do was to fully mobilize his mental energy to form a mental barrier to block the blade with his mental power comparable to the 8th level of Qi. He should be able to handle the blade after all. The dwarf ghost was splitting its mental power to attack all 5 people simultaneously. At this moment, an unexpected situation occurred. A black hole appeared out of nowhere within Songwen's sea of consciousness, and the extremely sharp transparent blade was instantly swallowed and disappeared. Songwen was astonished as he sensed the events unfolding in his sea of consciousness. The black hole in the sea of consciousness appeared quickly and disappeared just as swiftly. After devouring the transparent blade, it vanished. What is this black hole? Could it be that I can devour others' souls because of this black hole in my sea of consciousness? Songwen wondered, his mind racing with confused thoughts. To the outside observer, Songwen appeared unharmed by the mental attack. Similarly unscathed was Lao Chun. Lao Chun did not have any mental defense talismans to fully withstand the dwarf ghost's mental attack. His survival was due to a combination of luck and ruthlessness. The position he was standing in was fortunately close to Lu Qiao and Lu Mu, unlike Songwen, who was deeply immersed in self-cultivation without guidance and had a poor understanding of cultivators' techniques. Lao Chun and the others recognized the transparent blade as a mental attack as soon as it appeared. He directly used Lu Qiao to shield himself and then let the transparent blade pierce Lu Qiao's forehead. In an instant, Lu Qiao's 7 orifices bled profusely, and he lost his breath immediately. His soul was shattered by the mental blade at this moment. Lu Mu was holding her father's corpse and crying out loud. They were originally ordinary, scattered cultivators from outside the Tianyuan Valley. Although their cultivation resources were scarce and their progress slow, with their cultivator strength, they still lived without worry, far better than those common people struggling for their daily meals. Father and daughter were well aware of the dangers of the cultivation world, so they didn't pursue profound cultivation or immense power, just hoping for a peaceful life together. Lu Mu was content with such a life, occasionally witnessing strange and powerful spells. The sudden appearance of Yen Gu and the others shattered their peaceful life, forcibly abducting them into this dangerous cave. Perhaps this was the cruelty of the cultivation world. Whether you struggle or not, once you step in, you have no quiet life anymore, and you might face calamities at any time. Lao Chun glanced at the grieving Lu Mu and casually unleashed a surge of malevolent energy. Lu Mu fell to the ground, twitching uncontrollably. Her eyes, bulging intense pain swept over her entire body, and she made incoherent ha-ha sounds. After a few breaths, she joined her father in death. Xianyi and Zi barely managed to withstand the mental blade, but their sea of consciousness suffered significant shock. blood flowed from their 7 orifices. Their mental state became somewhat weakened, and their heads throbbed with pain. Yengu fared the worst. His sea of consciousness was already severely injured by the dwarf ghost. The subsequent attack from the dwarf ghost only worsened his condition, leading to a critical injury and causing him to faint on the ground. Songwon, having confirmed that his sea of consciousness was intact, focused on defending against any further attacks from the dwarf ghost. Unexpectedly, the dwarf ghost, heavily injured and with the green-faced female ghost in a dying state, chose to leave. Likely seeking a way to save the female ghost, Songwon surveyed his surroundings. Zi and Xianyi were busy healing and recovering. Lao Chun occasionally glanced at the motionless Yen Gu on the ground and then at the beautiful senior sister, seemingly lost in thought. Xianyi, I'm going to leave, Songwon said to Xianyi. With the green-faced female ghost severely injured and the dwarf ghost's energy significantly depleted, it was the best time to seize the hollow cicada wood. He still had a heavenly thunder talisman which could provide immunity against the dwarf ghost's mental attacks. He was confident he could seize the hollow cicada wood under these circumstances. The pile of white bones where the hollow cicada wood was located was not far off. And without Xianyi's guidance, Songwon could still find it. I'll accompany you. Xianyi suddenly stood up. Why? Songwon asked. This place is not safe. The two ghosts share a deep bond. Having injured the green-faced female ghost, the dwarf ghost won't easily let us go. Whether the female ghost's injuries stabilize or she dissipates, the dwarf ghost will seek revenge on us. Being with you gives me more peace of mind. Xianyi glanced at Songwon. Seeing that Songwon had emerged unscathed after the dwarf ghost's mental attack and considering Songwon's seemingly unreasonable mental detection range, Xianyi decided to stay with him. End of the chapter. If you want to support me and read advanced chapters currently up to 119 as of September 13th, 24, visit my Patreon, Pa-Cindertl. Support me for as low as $1. Read this and other series on my Patreon. Like it? Add to library. Don't forget to vote to support the book if you like it. Chapter 86. Songwon lowered his head and did not immediately answer Xianyi. The cooperation between them had been relatively smooth before, but it was based on mutual use. Xianyi needed Songwon's help to obtain snake scales, and Songwon needed Xianyi to guide him. Now that both parties had lost their value to each other, continuing to stay together was not a good choice. Songwon was cautious about Xianyi's suggestion to seize the hollow cicada wood. Before Songwon could respond, Zi spoke up. First, she stood up and said, Junior brother, we should leave. This place is too dangerous. Senior sister, but what about your injuries? Lao Chun asked with concern. It's nothing serious. My father's condition can't wait. We must hurry. And as Xianyi said, this place is unsafe. Zi replied, then what about him? Lao Chun pointed at the unconscious Yen Gu. When he looked at Yen Gu, his eyes showed a trace of killing intent. Yen Gu's earlier distraction had caused much trouble for him and his sister. Xianyi glanced at Yen Gu and said, his soul has been severely injured. Without a soul-repairing elixir, it's difficult for him to regain consciousness. Then we should end his suffering. It's a mercy, Lao Chun said as he leaped forward and smashed Yen Gu's head with a palm strike. He then took Yen Gu's magic tools and storage bag. Lao Chun said to Xianyi, friend, since you saw it, how should we distribute the loot? Songwon had no intention of wasting time with them. Before Lao Chun could act, he activated the blood escape technique and quickly left, using the opportunity to distance himself from Xianyi. Xianyi looked at the departing Songwon, then at Lao Chun's storage bag and magic tools. Ultimately, he chose to stay. After all, Yen Gu was a cultivator at the qi refining stage, and he had many resources. It was worth taking. After a moment, they divided the spoils and moved out. Not long after, they saw Songwon returning with a grim expression. Friend Gua, what's wrong? Xianyi asked. Songwon said, the exit is blocked by hundreds of bone worms, and they are coming this way. Bone worms. The 4 of them were startled by the name. How did they just happen to appear in this passage? Xianyi frowned. They were likely dispatched by the dwarf ghost. When we were being chased by the dwarf ghost, a group of bone worms followed us. These bone worms were probably bred by the dwarf ghost. They were just weaker and fell behind. Songwon explained. Damn it! Xianyi cursed, then asked Songwon, friend, what is the strength of those bone worms? At the lowest, they are at the qi refining 1st stage, and at most, they are at the qi refining 4th stage. At least half of them are in the mid-qi refining stage. Songwon replied. Hearing this, everyone frowned and fell silent. The sheer number of bone worms made it seem like a challenge to break through. It would not be easy to escape, Songwon said. Everyone, we must act quickly and work together to fight our way out. The dwarf ghost has not returned yet. If he does, it will be even harder to escape. The others understood the gravity of the situation and did not voice any objections. Ze even took out a corpse bag from her waist, summoning a corpse puppet comparable to a chi refining 9th stage cultivator. As soon as the corpse puppet appeared, it startled Song Won and Xianyi, causing them to step back and increase their distance from Z. Feeling the overwhelming corpse aura emanating from the corpse puppet, Song Won couldn't help but click his tongue inwardly. This must be the true reason why Ze and her companions dared to venture deep into the cave in search of the hollow cicada wood. Let's go! Ze took the lead, rushing towards the exit. Senior sister, wait a moment. I have something to say to you. Lao Chun mustered all his courage and stopped Ze, his eyes filled with affection. Senior sister, I'm afraid if I don't speak now, I may never have the chance again. My feelings for you have never changed in 20 years. When I first saw you at 15, I fell in love with you. But you liked senior brother, which made me too afraid to express my feelings. Later, you and senior brother became a couple and had a daughter. I could only watch from afar and silently bless you. A few years ago, when senior brother passed away, I finally dared to show my feelings, but you remained distant with me. This time, with our master gravely poisoned and the other 5 senior brothers too scared to come into the cave, I came despite the danger, just to tell you that my feelings for you have never changed. Faced with Lao Chun's sudden confession, Ze was first stunned. Then her cold demeanor softened immediately. Perhaps it was her father's critical condition, or perhaps she was moved by her junior brother's long-standing companionship and deep feelings. Ze said, Junior brother, if we both survive this, I promise to marry you. Lao Chun was overjoyed, his eyes seemingly brimming with excited tears. Really? Senior sister? Ze nodded. The sudden depth of feeling between the senior and junior siblings left Song Won and Xianyi a bit dazed. Song Won glanced at Lao Chun, thinking to himself that he hadn't expected this person to be a deeply devoted admirer, just worried that in the end, he might end up with nothing. The 4 of them used their various skills to fight their way into the bone worm swarm. The bone worms varied in size from the size of a fist to that of a millstone. They had 8 legs and looked somewhat like spiders. Their bodies were gray and covered with a thick, hard layer of bone armor, significantly increasing their defensive capabilities. Song Won positioned the corpse puppet in front of him and wielded a bone-cleansing knife, continuously hacking at the bone worms that sprang from all directions, from time to time. Song Won also activated a fireball talisman. The abundance of bone worms allowed the fireball talisman to reach its full potential. Weaker bone worms were shattered by the explosions, and even the stronger ones were mostly driven back. The corpse puppet, controlled by Z, at Chi refining 9th stage, demonstrated terrifying killing power. The bone worms it faced showed almost no resistance. With a single strike, they were either killed or severely injured. This was still because Ze at Chi refining 7th stage was somewhat strained in controlling the Chi refining 9th stage corpse puppet and could not fully unleash its strength. Originally, the 4 planned to work together to break through, but the sheer number of bone worms, and perhaps the discord among them, gradually separated them. Ze and Lao Chun, with the help of the Chi refining 9th stage corpse puppet, pushed ahead to the forefront. Xianyi controlled 2 fierce ghosts and 5 lesser ghosts. He followed safely, not far behind Ze and Lao Chun. Song Won was left behind. His corpse puppet was only at Chi refining 5th stage, making its ability to harm the bone worms limited. The bone-cleansing knife was merely a low-grade magic tool, and besides being reasonably hard and sharp, it had no other special effects, making it difficult to cause widespread damage to the bone worms. However, the pressure on Song Won was also the smallest. Song Won looked at the others ahead. The nearest to him, Xianyi, was already over 20 meters away, and Ze's group was about to break out of the bone worm encirclement. They faced the most bone worms and endured the greatest pressure. It's time to show some real skills. If they manage to escape first, it will only be due to hidden strength that ends up trapping me in the cave. End of the chapter. If you want to support me and read advanced chapters currently up to 119 as of September 13th, 24, visit my Patreon. Pasindertl support me for as low as 1. Read this and other series on my Patreon. Like it? Add to library. Don't forget to vote to support the book if you like it. Chapter 87. Song-Wen opened his mouth, and a terrifying scene unfolded. A swarm of gray insects, flapping their wings, flew out of Song-Wen's mouth in a dense cloud, creating a chilling sight. The appearance of over 60 black-bellied beetle worms instantly relieved Song-Wen's pressure, as the number of bone worms around him began to rapidly decrease. Although the bone worms were not particularly large, they were much bigger compared to the beetle goo. The beetle goo had a significant advantage against the bone worms, which relied solely on physical attacks and had no magical abilities. The beetle goo, being small and agile in flight, were hard for the bone worms to hit, although the beetle goo lacked magical abilities. Their small size allowed them to easily target the weak spots on the bone worms' abdomens and launch attacks, to avoid excessive mental exhaustion. Song-Wen gave attack orders to the black-bellied beetle goo and then ignored them. He began focusing on dealing with the more powerful bone worms. The black-bellied beetle goo were still somewhat weak and struggled to kill the bone worms at Chi refining 6th stage. A blood mist rose around Song-Wen. Secret blood art? Blood sacrifice. This was the first time he used the blood sacrifice technique in combat. His aura surged instantly, soon breaking through to the Chi refining 7th stage, with a hint of approaching Chi refining 8th stage. With the blood-red mist surrounding his bone-picking knife, Song-Wen cleaved through a Chi refining 6th stage bone worm. Bang! The bone worm was sent flying backward, a crack appearing in its hard bone shell. The powerful force penetrated through the crack and crushed its internal organs. The bone-picking knife also suffered a significant chink, causing Song-Wen some heartache. This knife had been with him for over 2 years, and he was still quite adept with it during dissection. He hadn't expected it to be damaged today. Song-Wen stowed the bone-picking knife into his storage bag, intending to see if he could find a way to repair it later. At this moment, he noticed that his corpse puppet had already been incapacitated, its body severely damaged by the bone worms, looking like it could fall apart at any moment. He could only retrieve it into the corpse storage bag. The burst of blood energy from Song-Wen attracted the surrounding bone worms. Relying on the strong cultivation from the blood sacrifice technique, his formidable physical strength from the corpse king blood refining technique and the 10,000 poison body, and using his sharp fingernails as weapons, Song-Wen engaged in close combat with the bone worms. After about 15 minutes, Song-Wen had cleared most of the bone worms around him. The remaining bone worms surrounding him could no longer limit his movements, allowing him the opportunity to escape. During the battle, he also noticed a peculiar phenomenon. After killing the bone worms, the black-bellied beetle worms would burrow into the carcasses of the bone worms and consume a tiny transparent crystal inside. Seeing the beetle goo actively consuming these crystals, Song-Wen speculated that they might be something beneficial for their advancement. He also collected several bone worm corpses for future cultivation of beetle goo. Although Song-Wen did not know what these transparent crystals were, he was certain they were not monster cores. A Chi refining beetle worm could not possibly have a core from a third-tier monster. After the intense battle, not a single black-bellied beetle worm was left unharmed. Over a dozen had fallen victim to the bone worms' attacks. Suddenly, 2 Chi refining 6th stage bone worms leaped high and lunged at Song-Wen with their bites. Song-Wen's claws extended, channeling all his strength to grab at the 2 bone worms. 2 bone worms had 5 holes punctured in their bodies and died on the spot. Song-Wen's hands trembled slightly, his fingers ached severely as the immense force from the 2 bone worms caused him to stagger backward. At that moment, another Chi refining 6th stage bone worm leaped out and charged towards Song-Wen's chest. With no time to retract his hands to defend himself, Song-Wen could only activate the ghost head shield to block the bone worm. Although the ghost head shield managed to block the bone worm's attack, the immense force transmitted through the shield sent Song-Wen flying out of the encirclement. The collision with the bone worm did not injure Song-Wen but allowed him to use the opportunity to jump out of the bone worm's encirclement. His blood aura surged once again. Secret blood art. Blood escape. If other disciples of the corpse demon sect knew that someone was simultaneously practicing both the blood sacrifice technique and the blood escape technique and using them together, they would certainly call him a fool or a madman. This is reckless. Burning through your blood essence like this, after a few breaths you might exhaust yourself to death. Song-Wen himself felt his blood essence running low. The speed at which his blood essence was consumed during the full-scale battle with the blood sacrifice technique exceeded his expectations. He took out a jade vial from his storage bag and poured its contents directly into his mouth. The vial contained the blood essence he had stolen from the corpse cave for this trip. He had prepared 10 vials of blood essence for himself. After consuming 3 vials in quick succession, his blood essence was once again replenished. Songwon ordered the beetle goo to block the bone worms with all their might while he found a gap to use the blood escape technique, slipping through the encircling swarm of insects. At the same time, he recalled the beetle goo beyond the swarm of insects. Only a few scattered bone worms remained. At this time, Songwon continued to use the blood sacrifice technique with his cultivation close to the peak of Qi refining 7th stage, making the blood escape technique move at more than double the speed compared to using it alone. To maximize his speed, he also applied a haste talisman to himself. Using his rapid movement, Songwon avoided attacks from scattered beetle goo and did not engage them in combat. Soon, he saw Xianyi ahead, as well as Zi and Lao Chun, who were approaching the cave's fork. Both Xianyi and Zi and Lao Chun still had many bone worms surrounding them. Songwon pressed against the cave wall, moving at full speed, and with a terrifying speed comparable to Qi refining 9th stage, he rushed past them. Occasionally, scattered bone worms attacked Songwon, but he ignored them, relying on his robust physique and the protective purple scale armor to withstand the blows. Seeing that Songwon had exited the fork and was heading towards the direction of the hollow cicada tree, Zi became anxious. With one person escaping, there would be fewer people to share the pressure from the bone worms, leading to an increase in their numbers. We must escape as soon as possible, at least catch up with Xian Yi and escape first, Zi said urgently, controlling the corpse puppet to its maximum capacity. With her cultivation controlling a Qi refining 9th stage corpse puppet drained her spiritual energy rapidly. Her internal spiritual energy had already fallen below 1/3. Senior sister, why don't you escape alone? I'll stay behind to hold off the bone worms, Lao Chun suddenly suggested. Zi shook her head firmly and said, no, we came together, we must leave together. Feeling the concern from his senior sister, Lao Chun was invigorated and suddenly full of fighting spirit. All right, senior sister, let's break out together. TL note, ah, how cute. End of the chapter. Fun fact. You can now support me and read advanced chapters of RDC. Currently up to 130 as of 14 Sep 24. Just visit my Patreon, Pa_Cinder_TL. If you are content with the free chapters, you can show your appreciation by joining me for as low as 1. You can read this and other series more coming in the future on my Patreon. Chapter 88. With the Qi refining 9th stage corpse puppet, Zi and Lao Chun finally carved a bloody path and broke through the encirclement. The two of them fled with all their might and eventually burst out of the fork in the tunnel, heading in the direction Songwon had escaped. The position they were searching for, the forsythia, was in the same direction as the hollow cicada wood, but located deeper within the cave. After completely shaking off the pursuit of the bone worms, Zi suddenly stopped and said, Junior brother, let's find a secluded place to rest for a while. Zi was in a terrible state. She had been injured by the mental attack of the dwarf ghost, and after controlling a Qi refining 9th stage corpse puppet, she had been fighting for a long time. At this moment, not only was her spiritual energy nearly depleted, but her mental energy was also severely exhausted. All right, senior sister. Just as Zi heard Lao Chun's voice from behind, a sharp pain struck her chest. She looked down and saw the bloody tip of a sharp sword. A cold, gleaming longsword had pierced through her back. With the bloody tip emerging from her body, blood flowed down the sword, quickly soaking her clothes. Zi could feel her strength rapidly fading and her life force swiftly draining away. She knew she was dying, but why would her junior brother betray her? Just a short while ago, he had expressed his feelings to her, saying he was willing to give everything, including his life, for her. She turned her head with great difficulty, her expression filled with pain and disbelief. Why? Lao Chun, looking at the beautiful and soon-to-die senior sister he had successfully ambushed, seemed somewhat deranged. He roared, why? You ask why? I've admired you for 20 years, but you've never given me a second glance, ignoring everything I've done for you. You chose to be with the senior brother. I had nothing to say about it, but you shameless woman, even while being with senior brother, you secretly got involved with second senior brother. After senior brother's death, you became even more brazen, getting involved with third senior brother, fourth senior brother, fifth senior brother, and seventh junior brother. Among the 7 of us, you slept with them all, yet you still pretended to be aloof and pure in front of me, acting like a goddess. After a moment of furious shouting, Lao Chun seemed to calm down, though his calmness was twisted. Senior sister, don't worry, with this Qi refining 9th stage corpse puppet, I will control the sect from now on. I will take good care of your and senior brother's daughter. I will also take your corpse back and refine it properly. Ensuring it doesn't rot, I will make sure your beauty is preserved forever. After I die, I will bury our bodies together. You. Ziyi's eyes were filled with despair as she fell to the ground, her life extinguished. Lao Chun looked at the corpse of the senior sister he had admired for 20 years, his twisted expression suddenly turning sorrowful. Senior sister, don't blame me. It's you who forced me. Why did you have to be so ruthless to me? If you weren't so harsh, I wouldn't have had to resort to such measures. 200 meters away, in a crevice of the rock, Songwon, who was replenishing his energy, watched the scene with shock. He had previously thought Lao Chun was just a sycophant, but it turned out he was a scheming and ruthless person. The master was poisoned and in critical condition, urgently needing a spiritual remedy. Lao Chun had used the pretext of accompanying the senior sister to collect herbs to stay by her side, taking the opportunity to kill her when she was weakened and seize the strongest combat force in the sect, thereby becoming the actual controller of the sect. After 20 years of unrequited love, Lao Chun's twisted and pathological nature had turned to coveting the senior sister's daughter. Moreover, it seemed he also had no intention of letting the senior sister's corpse go, even planning to bury them together in the future. Such perverted emotions born from love and hatred were indeed difficult to understand and terrifying, it must be said. This person's plans were far-reaching, step-by-step, and ruthless. However, plans always fail to keep up with changes, as evidenced by the present situation. Songwon felt it was time to replenish some blood essence. As he bent down to retrieve the storage bag and corpse-raising bag from senior sister's waist, Lao Chun suddenly heard the sound of running from a distance. Looking up, he saw a blood-red figure charging toward him. It was Guitao. Songwen's speed was too fast for Lao Chun to react much. He slapped his waist with both hands, releasing a chi-refining 5th stage corpse puppet, and simultaneously activated a fireball talisman. Facing the incoming fireball, Songwen did not dodge. He raised his hand and struck it. Boom. The fireball shattered into pieces, exploding and scattering flames everywhere. Then Songwen threw a punch to block the attack of the corpse puppet. With the corpse puppet's obstruction, Songwen's speed suddenly decreased, giving Lao Chun precious time. Lao Chun pulled out a bell and was about to activate the magical artifact when he suddenly felt a sharp pain in the back of his head. In his perception, 2 tiny insects had appeared at the back of his head, crushing his skull and drilling into his brain. Lao Chun looked down at the corpse of the senior sister, then fell directly on top of Ziyi's body, closing his eyes with a faint smile. In life and death together. Although his plan ultimately failed, at least he died alongside the senior sister. Songwen arrived at the 2 corpses, scavenged their belongings, and then devoured their blood essence and souls. A chi-refining 7th stage and a chi-refining 5th stage fresh corpse made Songwen's blood essence, which was already quite full, somewhat oversaturated. Just as Songwen finished dealing with the 2 corpses, he saw the rather disheveled Xianyi rushing toward him. Guitao, it's really great to see you. Xianyi, looking exhausted from consuming a lot of magical energy, said with a face full of relief. Songwen was somewhat surprised. Xianyi was indeed like a persistent plague, hard to shake off. Congratulations on escaping, Xianyi. Thanks for leading the way earlier. We'll part ways here. Xianyi was momentarily stunned but quickly realized that Songwen was wary of him and did not want him to follow. Xianyi nodded and said, "Then I wish you a smooth journey. We'll meet again." Songwen cupped his hands in acknowledgement and then turned to leave, quickly disappearing into the dark cave. After traveling for 2 more miles, Songwen stopped and released the beetle puppet, waiting for a moment to ensure Xianyi did not follow before continuing on his way. 2/4 of an hour later, Songwen finally arrived at the pile of bones with the hollow cicada wood. The bone pile was in a massive cave, covering an area of about 2 or 3 acres. The cave floor was covered in white bones, with the pile in the center reaching several meters high. At the very top of the bone pile, there were 2 jade-like spiritual trees, one about a foot tall and the other over 3 feet. This was the hollow cicada wood he was looking for. Songwen did not advance recklessly. Instead, he released the beetle puppet to search the cave, but found no abnormalities. No abnormalities were the biggest anomaly. As the lair of the dwarf ghost and the blue-faced female ghost, there could not be no danger at all. After searching around and still finding no trace of the dwarf ghost, Songwen no longer waited. He released a somewhat damaged corpse puppet and directly rushed toward the 3-foot-tall hollow cicada wood. Songwen had already activated both the blood escape technique and the blood sacrifice technique, ready to deal with any potential danger. End of the chapter. Fun fact: you can now support me and read advanced chapters of RDC, currently up to 130 as of 14 Sep 24. Just visit my Patreon. Pass under TL if you are content with the free chapters. You can show your appreciation by joining me for as low as 1. You can read this and other series more coming in the future on my Patreon. Chapter 89. As the corpse puppet approached the hollow cicada wood, the bone pile in the distance suddenly began to churn and move. Something was emerging from beneath the white bones. The object was moving extremely quickly, and in an instant, it had reached the feet of the corpse puppet, then burst out from the pile of bones, sending countless bones flying. It was the dwarf ghost. It charged directly into the corpse puppet, sending it soaring through the air. Taking advantage of this, the dwarf ghost attacked the lower half of the corpse puppet with its claws, which were swirling with ghostly energy. The sturdy left leg of the corpse puppet was instantly severed at the root. The chi-refining 6-stage corpse puppet was no match for the dwarf ghost. The dwarf ghost was preparing to thoroughly destroy the corpse puppet, but suddenly stopped. It turned out that emerging from the bone pile had exposed its hiding cave. Inside the cave where the dwarf ghost was hiding, the large green-faced female ghost was lying there in extreme weakness. It was unclear what method the dwarf ghost had used to save the nearly dissipated soul of the female ghost. A dozen beetle goo were buzzing around the female ghost, their claws outstretched, as if they were about to shred her soul completely. Human, if you dare to harm her in any way, I will ensure your soul is scattered. The dwarf ghost, as if it had been stepped on its tail, suddenly became furious. The ghostly energy on its body began to churn violently, making the entire cave eerie and suffused with ghostly energy. The dwarf ghost's voice was unpleasant, like an old windbox, making a howling noise. Seeing the dwarf ghost's reaction, Songwen revealed a faint smile. He hadn't expected it to actually work. Earlier in the cave, the dwarf ghost had chosen to abandon the attack on them to save the critically injured female ghost. Songwen had guessed at the time that the female ghost was very important to the dwarf ghost, or that they had a deep emotional bond, so, upon discovering the green-faced female ghost, Songwen decided to use the weakened female ghost to threaten the dwarf ghost. Give me that 300-year-old hollow cicada wood, and I will leave without harming her in any way. Songwen said, That's impossible. The dwarf ghost roared. Oh? Is that so? Songwen said with a sinister smile. The 16 black-bellied beetle puppets surrounding the female ghost suddenly surged with spiritual energy. The already extremely weak female ghost, surrounded by so many beetle puppets, was disturbed by the gusts of spiritual energy from their flapping wings, making her soul sway as if it were about to shatter at any moment. Stop! You must stop! The dwarf ghost shouted in panic. I will give you the hollow cicada wood. The dwarf ghost floated toward the hollow cicada wood, reaching out to uproot it. Tian-gu. Don't. These 2 hollow cicada woods are what you have painstakingly searched for and transplanted. They are the key to your breakthrough to a higher-level ghost. The weakened female ghost suddenly spoke. Her voice was piercing and harsh, like 2 pieces of iron scraping against each other. The dwarf ghost stopped its hand from uprooting the hollow cicada wood and looked at the female ghost with a complicated expression. But if I don't give him the hollow cicada wood, he will kill you. The hollow cicada wood can be found again. But if your soul dissipates, you won't even have the chance to be reincarnated. The dwarf ghost's voice, which was already unpleasant to hear, now had a few sobs in it, seeing that the hollow cicada wood was almost in his grasp. But the female ghost's words caused complications. Songwen became anxious and urged, Hurry! Give me the hollow cicada wood, or I'll make my move. The dwarf ghost's face changed drastically. It shouted urgently, Don't kill her. I'll give it to you. With that, it pulled up the hollow cicada wood by its roots and threw it toward Songwen looked at the hollow cicada wood approaching him from midair, his face showing joy, but then he became alarmed again. It turned out that the green-faced female ghost, after uttering Tian-gu, goodbye, had her soul collapse and scatter. No! The dwarf ghost's voice was filled with anguish, sorrow, and despair. As if it had suddenly lost the meaning of life, ghostly energy surged around it, rising like a roaring flood. As the dwarf ghost rushed into the cave, ghostly energy surged wildly towards the torn soul of the female ghost, attempting to keep the green-faced female ghost in the mortal realm. However, it was ultimately in vain. The female ghost's fragmented soul, like a cloud of dissipating smoke, was scattered even faster by the ghostly energy. No! Another roar mixed with sorrow and anger erupted. The murderous intent was overwhelming, and the atmosphere was tumultuous. The boundless ghostly energy swept wildly in all directions. The 16 black-bellied beetle puppets that hadn't managed to escape were engulfed by the ghostly energy, losing their vitality instantly, and were swept away by the ghostly energy, drifting aimlessly. Song 1, who had finally secured the hollow cicada wood, was activating the blood escape technique to flee. When he sensed the death of the black-bellied beetle goo, he had already lost 15 beetle goo during the battle with the white bone worm, and now with the loss of 16 more, he had lost a total of 31. However, Song 1 was too preoccupied with his escape to think about these losses. He just wanted to get as far away as possible. The enraged dwarf ghost was terrifyingly formidable. Song 1 felt like things had gotten out of control. He hadn't expected the emotional bond between these two ghosts to be so deep. The dwarf ghost had given up its chance for advancement for the female ghost. The female ghost, in turn, was willing to disintegrate her soul for the dwarf ghost. Such a moving, steadfast, and selfless love. To think it happened between two ghosts was almost unbelievable, willing to give everything, even life, for the other. That might be the most beautiful form of love. In contrast, the entanglement between Lao Chun and the purple-clad figure was filled with madness, pathology, and schemes. Sometimes, human emotions could be less pure and sincere than those of ghosts. The ghostly energy from the dwarf ghost enveloped the entire cave, causing countless bones from the bone pile to rise and float toward the dwarf ghost. The dwarf ghost's momentum rapidly increased, quickly reaching the chi-refining 9th stage. In an instant, a massive ghostly figure over 2 yards tall, covered in bones as if wearing a bone armor, appeared. Human, die! The roar of the bone dwarf ghost reverberated through the cave, causing countless rocks to fall. The bone dwarf ghost chased after Song 1, crashing through the cave and smashing countless stones. By now, Song 1 had already covered 2 or 3 miles, despite using the blood-burning technique. The blood scent he left behind, combined with the surrounding corpse energy and yin energy, was quite conspicuous, allowing the dwarf ghost to track him easily. The speed of the bone dwarf ghost was faster than the exhausted Song 1, and the distance between them was gradually closing. Boom! Song 1 collided with a corpse, which was comparable to a chi-refining 3rd stage corpse. The impact shattered the corpse into pieces, sending rotting flesh flying. Several wandering corpses, attracted by Song 1's strong blood scent, hurried towards him. Before they could get close, Song 1's figure disappeared without a trace. Following closely, the 2-yard-tall bone dwarf ghost charged in. The ghostly energy swept through the corpses, knocking them to the ground and stripping off layers of rotting flesh, revealing their stark white bones. The bone dwarf ghost, unable to catch up with the human in front, was burning with fury. A transparent blade appeared in front of it, then swiftly crossed the distance of several dozen meters and stabbed towards the back of Song 1's head. Song 1 swayed slightly but did not slow down. Continuing his escape, the bone dwarf ghost was momentarily stunned. It hadn't expected its invincible spiritual attack to miss. Not only had it failed to injure the damned human, but it had also slowed its own speed, increasing the distance between them even further. End of the chapter. Fun fact: you can now support me and read advanced chapters of RDC, currently up to 140 as of 15 Sep 24. Just visit my Patreon. Pass under TL if you are content with the free chapters. You can show your appreciation by joining me for as low as 1. You can read this and other series more coming in the future on my Patreon. Chapter 90. Xianyi was quite pleased with the traps he had set. He had hidden the 8 flags of the blazing fire array in the crevices of the rocks. They were difficult to detect without a thorough mental scan. Song 1 had shown an extraordinarily strong mental ability, surpassing the detection range of the perfected chi refining stage, and could ignore the mental attacks of the dwarf ghost. Xianyi suspected that Song 1 might possess a powerful mental artifact. This thought made Xianyi greedy. He decided to take a risk and set an ambush on Song 1's likely path. As long as Song 1 stepped into the array, no matter how strong he was, Xianyi could slowly grind him down. However, Xianyi was troubled by how to lure Song 1 into the trap without him being cautious. After observing for several days, Xianyi saw that Song 1 was extremely cautious. Suddenly, Xianye's face brightened with joy. He's coming. HM? Something's not right, Guitao seems to be fleeing. Xianye thought to himself. He hesitated for a moment, unsure whether to stop Song-won. He worried that the ghost creatures chasing Song-won might be too strong and might cause trouble for him. Seeing Song-won about to enter the array's range, Xianye steeled himself. Fortune favors the bold. He immediately activated the array plate, and a red light shield appeared out of nowhere, trapping Song-won within the array. Instantly, fierce flames roared within the array, and the temperature rose sharply. When Xianye noticed Song-won had also spotted him. Like Xianye, Song-won had a look of delight. He was struggling with how to shake off the dwarf skeleton ghost, and unexpectedly, Xianye came right to him. Song-won had anticipated Xianye's intentions. There were likely ambushes ahead. Better to face a lesser threat than the dwarf skeleton ghost. Compared to the dwarf skeleton ghost, Xianye was like a soft target. Haha, Guitao. I want to see where you can run now. Hand over your mental artifact, and I'll make it quick for you, Xianye said with a smug tone as Song-won plunged into the array. A golden shield first appeared around Song-won, followed by a green bronze bell, both protecting him with the double protection of the Vajra talisman and 10,000 poison body. Song-won could still withstand the high temperatures within the array. He looked gratefully at Xianye, who was proudly showing off, and thought to himself, humans, helping others in times of crisis. A silver talisman appeared in Song-won's hand, and a majestic divine power surged from it, but it remained undirected. Boom, boom, boom. The dwarf skeleton ghost stomped heavily into view. Each step it took resonated throughout the cave. Xianye's expression froze as he looked at the suddenly appearing dwarf skeleton ghost. What kind of monster is that? The powerful aura of the dwarf skeleton ghost made Xianye feel a chill. Damn. The creature chasing Guitao is comparable to a chi-refining 9th stage monster. The dwarf skeleton ghost also noticed Xianye and the blazing fire array. It mistakenly thought Xianye and Song-won were in cahoots. After assessing Xianye's strength and the power of the array, it charged straight into the array's shield. Rumble! A thunderous sound shook the ground. The cave trembled. Countless rocks above the cave were shattered and fell down. The shield of the blazing fire array shattered under the dwarf skeleton ghost's violent impact. The array was forcefully breached, and the array plate in Xianye's hand instantly cracked into pieces. Xianye was struck as if by lightning, blood pouring from his mouth, and his aura instantly became weak. The dwarf skeleton ghost also suffered. It was knocked back a few steps, and the intense heat and the celestial yang energy from the array burned many of its bones. Black Song-won's eyes lit up. Here's my chance. Crack! A thunderous sound echoed throughout the cave. A silver lightning bolt appeared out of nowhere, twisting and writhing like a strange serpent. It surged unpredictably. Boom! The silver serpent struck the dwarf skeleton ghost, enveloping it in a layer of silver. The immense divine power purified all impurities within. The ghostly energy on the dwarf skeleton ghost melted away like spring snow. Its numerous bones quickly turned into piles of dust, swept away by the fierce wind, dispersing in all directions. When the silver serpent retreated, the dwarf skeleton ghost was left with no bones at all, and its aura plummeted to the chi-refining 8th layer at this point. The dwarf ghost was severely injured, and even its soul body became unstable indeed. A divine thunder spell, with its immense heavenly might, could show its greatest destructive power against evil spirits and demons. Song-won, unaware of the dwarf skeleton ghost's injuries, had already fled as soon as the lightning struck. At this moment, he was already 2 or 3 miles away. The severely wounded dwarf skeleton ghost realized it could no longer catch that damned human. Even if it did catch up, it was doubtful it could kill him in its current state. Its immediate priority was to quickly heal its wounds, or it would be at risk of falling in this perilous cave, where numerous corpses and vengeful spirits were not to be trifled with. It turned its gaze to Xianye, who was heavily injured and had not managed to escape, lying beside the destroyed array. A moment later, the dwarf skeleton ghost, having devoured Xianye's soul and life force, looked at the direction Song-won had fled, filled with murderous intent, but also with sorrow and helplessness. It knew it would probably never have another chance to encounter this person again. There might never be another opportunity to avenge this blood feud. Unaware of the situation behind him, Song-Wen did not dare to stop for a moment. He continuously used blood escape and blood sacrifice as he dashed through the cave. When his blood energy ran low, he drank a vial of essence blood. When he drank the last vial of essence blood, he stopped using blood sacrifice and only continued with blood escape. In just 3 hours, he had covered the journey that had taken him 2 days to travel in. The cave's exit was now in sight. Looking at the faint light at the exit, Song-Wen felt it was so bright and welcoming. He released his flying boat and used his remaining spiritual power to propel it towards the sky. After leaving the underground caves, more than an hour later, Song-Wen successfully exited the ancient battlefield. On a cliff several dozen miles away from the ancient battlefield, he found a cave and hid inside. After prolonged battles and escapes, his spiritual power was nearly depleted, and he urgently needed to recover his strength to guard against any unforeseen events. However, things did not go as hoped. A quarter of an hour later, 3 figures appeared on the cliff top. 1 man and 2 women. The man was at the Qi refining 7th layer. One of the women was at the Qi refining 6th layer, and the other was at the Qi refining 5th layer. Just now, someone clearly used a flying boat and came this way. Why can't we detect the person's aura now? Asked the woman at the Qi refining 6th layer. The man replied, they must have used a technique or artifact to conceal their aura and hide. Big brother, what should we do? Second sister, you and I will use flying talismans to go down and check. Third sister, you stay on the cliff top, keep watch and be ready to assist. The man instructed. The 3 of them were siblings, scavengers roaming the outskirts of the ancient battlefield. They generally did not attack those entering the ancient battlefield but waited until they emerged. Most cultivators who had just exited the ancient battlefield were either injured or had exhausted their spiritual power, making them relatively easy targets. Moreover, they only targeted those who were alone or had lower cultivation levels. This cautious strategy had allowed them to ambush dozens of cultivators with few failures. End of the chapter. Fun fact: you can now support me and read advanced chapters of RDC. Currently up to 140 as of 15 Sep 24. Just visit my Patreon. Pass under TL if you are content with the free chapters. You can show your appreciation by joining me for as low as 1. You can read this and other series more coming in the future on my Patreon.